I just saw this on my Blue Sky feed. This is from Zinnia Jones, who is a trans woman who I've been aware of. I think she came out before me, probably a reasonable amount of time before me. I don't know. She has a website where she debunks various arguments and has been present in my feed since I started Twitter. She's quite blunt, and I wanted to read her take here because I saw it and I thought, I understand where she's coming from. I don't really disagree with what she's saying. It's blunter than I would say it, and I thought I would just also share my take on this. So this isn't me like dunking on her or calling her out at all. I think you should go and follow her and check out her arguments and websites and stuff. But so it's referring to this joke by The Onion. So The Onion has come out with man waiting until parents die before doing a single thing that makes him happy, which I guess is a thing. But it's certainly a thing. What I can speak for is it's definitely a thing for LGBT people. I know from living in the closet before I came out that I was worried about what my family and parents would think quite a lot. So Zinni is commenting on a Reddit forum. And so she's saying, everyone on r/ask transgender just posts about how they're doing this with their family. And I reply and tell them, fuck that. Forget your dipshit mother and her opinions. She's one fucking person and they just ignore it and keep imploding in on themselves forever for mother and father transphobe. Fucking stop it. You're an adult. They are also adults. They don't get to tell you what to do anymore. You get that any more than you get to tell them what to do. So either you stop them from telling you what to do, or you start telling them what to do. Why would a transphobe matter just because they sired or birthed you? You didn't know them at the time they did that. You had nothing to do with that decision and have no commitment to them, and you already owe them nothing. You especially owe them nothing the very minute they are transphobic. It seems like these parents, transphobes, have even conditioned another adult not to resist this. That resistance is somehow unthinkable or impossible and should not be attempted at all. You should just accept whatever consequences they threaten you with or actually do impose on you. Those consequences are generally bearable, and your gender is more important than avoiding the consequences. Being trans is more important than the punishment others will inflict on you for being trans. So get a wooden spoon, bite down it, and tell your mum and dad what your name is and that you're already on HRT, and if they touch your property, you're calling the cops. And they can do whatever they decide to do next. They'll make their decisions. You be ready to make yours. It's time for every trans person who's in this purgatorial situation of half-death to start breaking out of these domestic, cisgender-built nuclear family prisons en masse. It's time to rip the Band-Aid off once and for all and separate yourselves from a situation that's imposing an intolerable life. I'm telling you that if you're living closeted and trans with your transphobic family, start a fight proactively with your transphobe father or mother, or both, over the transphobia towards you today, and keep doing it until they relent and discontinue the behaviour. Anyway, you get the idea. So this is a lot more harsh than I would say. Though I did kind of get a similar, much more walking on eggshells version from the therapist I was seeing at the time when I was coming out to friends and family. And I think, so this is what I want to say to everyone in this position. If what Zinnia said and how she said it got through to you, great. But if you're maybe thinking, that's a bit too spicy for me, I can give you my take and say to you what my therapist said. So yeah, I was very worried about coming out to my family, not because I thought they would hurt me, or not because I thought they would kick me out onto the street or anything. I was financially independent when I came out, and I was living in a city halfway across the country, so I wasn't in any physical or financial or anything kind of danger or threats or anything. I was worried about breaking our relationship, and I felt like I've always had a very good relationship with my family. I'm very lucky that my family are very loving, and that's always been the case. But I was so worried about upsetting them. And then when I did come out, I did upset them, and it was very difficult for them at the start. And some, they did say some things that I found very hurtful and upsetting. But eventually we've now got to the point where we're stronger and closer than ever. They're fully supportive, fully accepting, fight on my behalf and things. So I'm very lucky. But when I was in this position talking to my therapist, they did just say kind of what Zinnia said, like, well, you're an adult and they're adults. You're not actually responsible for their thoughts and feelings. They're responsible for them, and you're responsible for your thoughts and feelings. And, sure, when you come out to them, like the moment you come out, you have built up to that moment for months, years, decades, your entire life. You've been thinking about this for so long. And sometimes, for them, that is the first they have any inkling of it, because sometimes people are very oblivious. And so they might have a lot of negative thoughts. They might be shocked. They might be sad, upset, like angry. All of these emotions can come at once. And they are responsible for those things. And sure, once you're safe, financially and somewhere to live and all this kind of stuff, then they can deal with how they're going to deal with things. And if you are to sacrifice your life and your happiness to stop them from reacting, firstly, is that even what they would want? Like, I know some people are like, oh, my parents aren't very accepting, or they're very conservative, or and sure, some people who come out to their parents do get kicked out on the street, get attacked. Some people get disowned, and maybe that's happened to you, or maybe that is a real thing that could happen to you, and that's terrible. But that doesn't happen to everyone. And sometimes when you get negative reactions to start, they go away, like in the case of me, or you work on them. Well, I actually worked very hard with my parents to like get through everything, because it mattered a lot to me. Not judging anyone who doesn't, by the way. That's just the decision I made. But if you were suddenly given this news about someone you thought you knew, that they were suddenly totally different, you might be shocked, you might be upset, you might be angry, you might be all these things. And sometimes you just have to, like, emotions are irrational. Sometimes you just have to deal with a load of emotions. But when all the dust is settled and you're able to have a rational thought process, I mean, you're going to be like, well, I'm glad that they told me. Like, opening up and telling someone your like deepest secret, or showing them who you really are, is like the most, you should be honored if someone does that to you. And so revealing who you are and coming out to someone, sure, they might be shocked in the moment, and that moment might last years. But really, would they really want you to keep that secret for them forever? And then you've also got to think, like, whose happiness is important here? Like, if you're in a position where you have very mild gender dysphoria and you think about transitioning once every other year, like for one evening when you're tired or something, then, and your parents are going to like have the worst time ever and not going to recover for it for the rest of their lives or something, maybe you could rationally make an argument that coming out isn't really worth it. But I don't think I think most of the people trapped in this, most of the people posting on forums all the time being like, I don't know how to come up to my parents, maybe I never should. Like, when you're at that point, maybe the gender dysphoria is a little bit worse than just slightly mild. And certainly if you're anything like me, it's just something that constantly eats away at you all the time, and you have to actively suppress it all the time. And like, it's horrible that my parents were upset when I came out to some degree. It was upsetting for them. But I don't think the total amount, like, if you were to get upset units, if you were to like get whatever, measure it in tears or something, the amount of upset caused by that like shift which was a short term, like a temporary reaction. Like there was a lot of sadness and then it trailed off and then it's grown into real happiness or grown back into real happiness. Like that, the amount of sadness in that time is way, way less than if I had stayed in the closet for the rest of my life. Or at least, until my parents died. Because, the shock of someone coming out is a big deal for a little bit and then it kind of fits normal now. Whereas dysphoria doesn't just go away. In my experience, I guess it did get worse over time. It mainly just got way worse at puberty and then was just like constant stuff. But I know, talking to people who came out much later in life, they were saying that basically it just gets worse and worse. So that the like suffering, if you were just trying to step back and do some kind of utilitarian approach to it, you're minimizing human suffering to come out. So that is another argument. But yeah, mainly I do agree with Zinnia and what my therapist said. They are adults, and I think it's very weird. If you're maybe much older, the idea that your parents are just like other adults, it might be something you've already got to. But when you're a teenager or in your early 20s, I think for a lot of people, certainly was the case for me, that my parents were still like, they weren't just like other adults. I was barely an adult then, I only just started being an adult, and my parents were still my parents, and I still respected them a lot, and everyone who, like, everything they said I still treated with a lot of gravity, even if if they said something I thought was wrong, it's my parents saying it. And so when I came out, it was kind of like and it didn't, it wasn't the ideal perfect coming out. It's kind of a moment where you realize that your parents are just other people, and you need to treat them like other adults. And that means, for sure, be there for them and offer them help and support and walk them through the difficulties of dealing with someone coming out. But also they've got to do their own learning and understanding and thinking and dealing with their own emotions. And you're not responsible for all of it. I think the world, the way coming out is viewed for all LGBT people is like, well, everyone's straight and cis until they come out, and suddenly you've shaken it all up and stuff. But that's just because the world is completely bullshit and it's full of all these ridiculous stereotypes and prejudices. Like, coming out shouldn't even be a thing. Why should anyone assume anything? Why should anyone even care? Like, if you have a kid and your kid brings home a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a non-binary person, or comes home and says like they're transitioning or something, why does that even have to be a thing that someone has to emotionally process? The reality is, today, in the real world, for a lot of people, that is a thing they just factually do have a shock to, and they have to process, and that's why coming out is a thing. But that's not true for everyone, and in the future, it's going to be true less and less, and maybe one day we'll get to a point where coming out doesn't matter. But I guess the last thing I would say to anyone who's in this position, if you're umming and ahhing about coming out and stuff, for me, it has been absolutely worth it. Probably the best decision I've ever made. Join up with leaving university and breaking up with my abusive ex, which I always see those as like the three best decisions I've ever made in my life. Coming out's probably one. Maybe the breaking up with my ex was number one. But either way, they were both all three were very difficult decisions, which required major changes in my life. And I was worried about upsetting everyone and everything around me, and I didn't really know how it was going to go. But in the long run, they were all just such good decisions. Deep down, I knew they were right, and it did upset people around me because change upsets people. But I'm not responsible for that. I was in situations that I was like trapped in through not really my own fault, and making decisions to change those things made my life better, but also ended up being best for most of the people around me. So I would say, personally, I rate Coming Out as 5 stars. Would do it again if I had to, but I really don't ever fucking want to do it again.